Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I'm not arguing with that. I'm just saying I think there's a much higher correlation with the education level as opposed to to the wealth level. That's I'm not arguing like the point you're making. I'm just saying I think there's a even greater correlation. That's what I was trying to get at. But getting back to consumerism and the point that Raymond was talking about, with people kind of looking at what, quote unquote, what everyone else has and wanting to buy that, and affecting their both financial and also I guess mental health. It certainly doesn't help that financial literacy and overall just kind of wealth management, or just budgeting even, are not taught in school, are not commonly talked about even between friends or whatnot. Like, it's just not something that's widespread and well known. It's not the common knowledge that I feel like a lot of people feel like it should be. So I think having consumerism be the way it is now to such a great extent in every single aspect of our lives, the fact that a lot of people can't really manage their money is really a detriment and really compounds the effect that consumerism has. And
I agree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, it's weird because it's almost taboo to talk about money amongst friends and stuff like that for a lot of people, right? And then in schools, it's like, in Planning 10 here in Canada, they taught you about basic budgeting, like, plan it out. How's your income going to be for the first year of university? How much are you going to plan on spending? Like, they had made you do this whole project. But budgeting is only one aspect of it,
Yeah.
And beyond that, they really do just kind of leave you out in the wind. They don't do much for you at all. There's a lot to learn, and I feel like it's one of the more important things people should learn.
I didn't even do that project.
For sure.
I had jazz with the planning, and we just skipped a lot of stuff.
Oh, man, lucky this dude.
Yeah.
Lucky, man. That project was whack. Okay, man. I'm gonna have to spend $5 on body wash every month. Okay, something like that.
Yeah, I guess it's good to get people to think about it, but the effectiveness of the project overall, I don't think. It
was good. I think. I feel like the budgeting, the really small stuff, I feel like they focused a little bit too much on that. Again, I did this ages ago, so I can't really remember. But I think it was pretty enlightening seeing just how ridiculous the housing prices were here in Vancouver. I'm like,
and think about how much worse it's gone between then and now.
These prices, or our cars, right? Looking at that and being like, you know what? Maybe the smartest financial play isn't to get a brand new car. Things like that.
Cars is huge when it comes to consumerism. Even way back,
or something else.
One of the beginning things of consumerism growing is the production of cars and getting people to buy new models all the time with Ford way back in the day. That's one of that's how Keeping Up with the Joneses kind of started almost, and how consumerism really got its boom. And cars were actually really cheap and affordable for a lot of people at the time. So they would be getting cars every year with the new model, with the new color, because that's the kind of marketing they did. So seeing that and seeing how today we're still getting people buying new cars, even though a lot of people know it's not a good financial choice to make. It doesn't make sense. The moment you buy a new car, its value is already depreciating. Yeah, and then
20% down as soon as you grab it off.
You have the monthly insurance costs. There's gas costs. You could obviously go electric, or at least say a fuel efficient one, or a hybrid. But just the cost for the fuel. There is maintenance costs. There's unforeseen repair costs. Just a lot of things that people aren't even thinking about when they're purchasing a car. They're just, okay, everyone has a car. Oh, they just got a new car. Maybe I should get a new car. And just that kind of thing. Still playing an effect.
Realize,
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it used to be. It's crazy. I watched the video. Yeah, sorry, Raymond. But I watched like a video a couple days ago. Cars used to be more expensive than houses back then. Like it was not uncommon to have your cars be kind of like, oh, this is the jewel, you know, and then your house like, oh yeah, the house was like $2,000 or something like that, something crazy though. But nowadays, you know, well, with the housing market, it's a little different. But it's interesting how people are still so interested in buying new cars.
Yeah, definitely not what it used to be.
It's definitely not what it used to be, though. Definitely not what it used to be, for sure. Because, yeah. But weird how nowadays, if you told somebody, like, yeah, your cars used to be more expensive than your entire house.
Yeah, houses were just really cheap.
That's not a thing anymore, dude. That's not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Not even close. It's ridiculous. It's alien.
Yeah.
They were really cheap, yeah. Yeah, but man, that was just crazy. Nowadays, you'd have to park like
I think it was
I forget
Economics Explained
or what channel it was, but like they mentioned, like, yo, nowadays you'd have to park some very expensive cars in your driveway for that to be the case.
So I think cars were like
just interesting little thing.
Kind of expensive. Well, not even that expensive. Houses were just really cheap, and then houses, the price just kept going up and up, and then cars got a little bit cheaper. And then sometime it got like more expensive, and in general, it's definitely much more expensive now than it was before. But houses are they just completely skyrocketed, especially in a lot of the places that we know.
Yeah,
a lot of places in Canada for sure.
Yeah, no, I forgot, bro.
Yeah.
Nah, it's chill. Yeah, man.
Yeah. No, it's all good. It's all good. But kind of getting back to financial literacy and how that's really compounding effect of consumerism. The fact that like a lot of people don't like we're talking about the budgeting and in like planning thing and whatnot, but I don't think we learn much about like taxes or about, you know, anything about like taking out mortgages or different accounts that you could open for investing and whatnot, different investment options, just none of that, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I mean, I remember I was watching a Kevin O'Leary video. I feel like half the time I'm just referencing a video, but he was mentioning that when the pandemic hit, turns out a lot of people in his like companies and in his supply chains, they didn't have any money set aside for retirement for emergencies at all. So they were just kind of screwed. And it was some crazy. It was like 30% or something, or maybe even I think it was something like 30% of people in his company's supply chains just were not ready for it at all financially. You know, I feel like a lot of that might be because, you know, I mean, a lot of people just aren't super well off nowadays, so they can't really afford to keep that much money on the side. You know, it makes sense. You know, some places have ludicrous rent, so maybe they just literally can't afford to put away very much every month. They'd have to be like penny pinching to the maximum to do that or something like that. So that makes sense. Can't expect people to like live like that. You know, it makes sense. It would be respectable, but I can understand why they wouldn't if they're living on super tight margins. But it's just interesting how I want to know like how many of those people knew that was an issue. You know what I mean? Like of those 30%, how many were like, okay, they knew like, if something else happened, I'll be in big trouble. I also want to add,
like, before we talk about this, it's also possible some of them are just buying too many things I don't need and just spending their money like that as opposed to putting it away with investments, with emergency fund. It's also very common for a lot of people to live above their means, live paycheck to paycheck, so they could live a lifestyle they can't actually afford. Like they could barely afford it if they really push themselves to live paycheck for paycheck with no funds left over. But a lot of people are doing that, and it's kind of scary. I mean, definitely are people like you're talking about who are, within their means or even below their means, and unfortunately, the place they're in, the situation they're in, they literally just don't have money left over. But there is definitely a big, or at least a relatively large portion of people who are just living above their means and spending their money like that and putting themselves in a dangerous situation that they could have avoided.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like the thing is, it's really tricky for those people that are like living paycheck to paycheck, right? I mean, especially if if we're talking about smaller paychecks here. Maybe they could penny pinch, maybe they could save a little bit, but what would their life be looking like when they do that? It would be just a terrible experience.
Yeah.
Not terrible, right? It would just be like, maybe that means like, oh, I can't go eat out with friends every week or something like that. So that's a sacrifice that they have to make. But when you're at that kind of like socioeconomic level, I feel like it's very difficult to do that to yourself and sacrifice that much when you already have maybe so little. It's kind of like, so it's really, the thing is, like, it must be so hard for people on that level. It's to kind of save and get like a safety net going.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it doesn't seem particularly imminent, like it doesn't seem too urgent for them. Maybe that might be another thing too. Yeah, like I always try to make sure that I at least have money for tuition, because that's really the only expenses that I absolutely need right now. Everything else I can cut away. So I just make sure I got enough money for that. That's the only thing that I have. And here in Canada, we don't have to worry about medical expenses. In the States, dude, I'd be terrified to live in the States, my guy. Any medical emergency, and you're screwed financially if you don't have some beefy insurance. Or even with insurance, a lot of times you still just get destroyed financially. It's insane. It's insane what's going on in the States with that.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Raymond. Because I'm going to bring something else.
Some people, because they either get to choose, to set themselves up for, later, even though it's not too much, it's still, something, or get to choose the life that they want to live, the lifestyle they want to live. It's kind of...
Yeah, and actually what you're talking about also relates to what I'm about to say, and is that for people with much bigger paychecks who have a lot more money, you could also kind of see the same situation a lot of the times. We've seen athletes go broke after their career time and time again. It's actually pretty frequent. We've seen actors, we've seen other just wealthy people who made their money and then just went broke. Lucky for them, they often have ways to make some money and get back on their feet that a lot of people with, not earning as much, opportunities that they just don't have, right? But for like people with a lot more money, you do see them living kind of lifestyles that they can't really afford, or at least can't afford forever. Maybe they could afford during this period of their time, but they're not really thinking about after their career, or at least after the prime of their career where they're making the big money. And on top of that, just kind of having people around you who are also living extremely, lavish lifestyles, that also kind of really just kind of have them buy into it and have consumerism at a different kind of level where, you're only getting that house in that neighborhood, everyone else on the team, has a full compound out, in the hills or whatnot, then you have people buying exotic animals. Like, come on. Is that really a purchase that is worth your money? Like for like a few people, it might be. I would argue for most of them, that's a decision that probably end up regretting later on in their lives. So just overall, people are oftentimes consuming a lot because of consumerism that's in the culture, because of advertising and marketing, and people from the bottom not making much all the way to the, well, maybe not the very top, but from like a pretty wealthy, that whole range, you could end up in pretty bad financial situations because of said consumerism, and also the fact that financial literacy and the whole kind of wealth management is very poorly taught and not widespread enough.
Yeah, I mean, the financial literacy is a big one there, because all these athletes that make millions and then lose it all, 9 times out of 10, they're the first ones in their family to have that kind of money, right? They're the first ones to make all that bank. You very rarely hear about people with like generational wealth going that bankrupt, you know what I mean? Because, if their parents made all that money and held on to it, chances are they'll be able to hold on to it too, because their parents will guide them or set them up somehow.